Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into a truly heartwarming and unforgettable story. The journey of Uri and Tu Tieu. From their awkward, funny first meeting with a spilled cup of coffee to the romantic proposal that changed everything. You'll see how small, unexpected moments can spark a love that lasts a lifetime. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. That evening, the little restaurant glowed with a soft golden light, warm and inviting, like it had been designed to make hearts feel lighter. The piano music floated through the air, subtle and gentle, weaving around the clinking of cutlery and soft murmurs from nearby tables. Uri sat across from Tu Tieu, his fingers curling around the warm cup of tea in front of him. He couldn't take his eyes off her. There was something in the way she held herself, the curve of her smile, the light in her eyes, that made him feel like the world outside had faded away. It was like she had wandered into his life, unexpectedly, quietly. But the moment she arrived, everything had shifted. Everything felt new. You know, Uri's voice broke through the music, soft and low, carrying that warm timbre that somehow made the words feel like a song. Every time I see you like this, I can't help but remember the first day we met. Tu Tieu tilted her head slightly, a playful curve in her lips. Her eyes sparkled like a sliver of moonlight catching on water. You mean the day you spilled coffee all over my notebook, right? Uri laughed, the sound deep and slightly awkward. That first meeting seemed like a lifetime ago, yet the memory was still crystal clear. They had met in a small cafe, just a normal afternoon that turned anything but ordinary. Uri, completely unaware of how clumsy he could be, had knocked over a cup of coffee, sending it spilling across the table and straight onto Tu Tieu's dress. It was one of those moments that could have gone terribly wrong, a classic cringe-worthy situation. But instead of panicking or fleeing, Uri had somehow turned it into the beginning of something unexpectedly sweet. He had apologized, nervously, stammered a little, and in that mix of awkwardness and sincerity, he had made her laugh. That laughter had been the spark. From that day on, Uri had quietly made his way into her life, showing up in small ways, paying for her coffee sometimes, leaving little notes, remembering her favorite pastries, noticing the things others overlooked. Every small gesture was clumsy, but it was honest, and slowly, it started to matter more than he had ever expected. Weeks passed, and those small, everyday moments began to stack up, building something real. Their first dates were simple, but filled with that quiet magic that made everything feel cinematic. One of the most memorable was their trip to the cinema. Uri had chosen the film carefully, something light, romantic, with just enough humor to keep them both laughing. But as always, life threw in a little imperfection. The seat next to his was wobbly, tilting slightly every time he moved, which meant that every attempt to settle comfortably resulted in tiny bumps and jostles that were somehow both frustrating and hilarious. At one point, while sharing a bucket of popcorn, their hands brushed. Just a fleeting contact, barely noticeable, but enough to send a little spark between them. Uri panicked slightly, adjusting his position, but Tu Tieu's grin told him everything was fine. In fact, it seemed like she might have been hoping for it. The dim glow of the movie screen highlighted her expressions in a way that made even the simplest gestures, like a laugh, a smile, or a glance, feel monumental. Between the comedic chaos of the wobbly seat and popcorn kernels that seemed to find their way everywhere except in the bucket, the evening unfolded like a gentle, tender dance. Uri's awkwardness didn't go unnoticed, and in fact, it became one of the things Tu Tieu adored. He had a way of being completely himself, imperfect and earnest, and in that, there was charm. As the movie played, they found themselves leaning in, sharing whispered comments, subtle touches, and quiet laughs. By the end, the theater wasn't just a place to watch a story on screen. It had become the backdrop for the story between them. A story written in small, intimate moments that no one else could see. And then came the night of the candlelit dinner. The kind that seemed like it had been plucked straight from a romantic film. Uri had spent hours planning it. Not just the table and the candles, but the words he would say. The way he would ask the most important question of his life. He was nervous, in that deep, stirring way where your chest feels tight and your stomach flips with anticipation. Tu Tieu looked radiant, and just being near her made everything feel heightened, like time had slowed down around them. When the moment came, Uri took a deep breath, reaching for the small velvet box he had hidden in his pocket. He placed it in front of Tu Tieu and spoke, his voice steady despite the storm of emotion inside him. He told her how she had changed his life, how every small gesture, every laugh, every look had made him fall deeper in love with her. And then, with a sincerity that made even the candles flicker, as if leaning closer to listen, he asked her to be with him forever. Tu Tieu's response was a mixture of laughter and tears, a combination that perfectly mirrored the journey they had shared. She nodded, accepting his proposal, and in that moment, the entire world seemed to shrink down to just the two of them. It was a quiet yet profound celebration of their love, the kind that didn't need grandiose displays, just the honest connection between two hearts that had found each other. That moment marked the turning point from their awkward, funny beginnings to something deeply meaningful. The spilled coffee, the awkward movie seat, the shy smiles, all of it had led to this point. Each small, imperfect moment had been a step toward understanding, trust, and a love that felt steady and unshakable. And as they held hands, hearts beating in a quiet rhythm together, Uri and Tu Tieu both knew that this was just the beginning. Their story, born out of clumsy charm and quiet dedication, had finally blossomed into something enduring and beautiful. And so, the narrative of Uri and Tu Tieu's love is a reminder that sometimes the most genuine connections come from the smallest, most unexpected accidents. A spilled cup of coffee, a shared bucket of popcorn, a gentle brush of hands. These moments, though seemingly insignificant, can grow into a lifetime of shared memories. Love doesn't always arrive in grand gestures. Sometimes it slips in quietly, turns your world upside down, and makes every ordinary day feel extraordinary. After that night, everything felt different, yet perfectly normal. Uri and Tu Tieu walked out of the restaurant hand in hand, the streets glowing with soft street lights, their shadows stretching alongside them like quiet witnesses to their happiness. The world seemed to hum with possibility, every ordinary sound amplified by the sheer excitement of what they now shared. Uri, who had once been clumsy and hesitant, felt lighter, braver. And Tu Tieu, who had learned to trust slowly, found comfort in the steady rhythm of his presence. The days that followed were filled with the kind of small, joyful routines that build the foundation of a relationship. Morning coffee runs became an adventure. They argued over who got the last croissant, laughing until their stomachs hurt. Afternoon walks through the park turned into playful competitions of who could spot the first blooming flowers. Uri's awkward jokes, once slightly cringeworthy, now made Tu Tieu laugh so hard she had tears in her eyes. And Uri, seeing her laugh, would feel a warmth spread through his chest that no grand gesture could match. One evening, Uri suggested they take a short trip to the lakeside, just the two of them. The sun was low, casting a golden glow over the water, and a gentle breeze rippled across the surface. They sat on a worn wooden dock, feet dangling above the water, sharing a quiet companionship that spoke louder than any words. Uri reached for a small notebook he had been carrying, his own clumsy version of a love letter. "I wrote this for you," he said, his fingers trembling slightly as he handed it over. Tu Tieu opened it carefully. Inside were scribbles, doodles, little reminders of all the moments they had shared. The spilled coffee, the popcorn incident at the cinema, a tiny sketch of the first restaurant where they had dinner together. Each page carried his voice, his humor, and his heart. Tu Tieu looked up at him, eyes glistening in the sunset. "You really remembered everything," she whispered. Uri shrugged, smiling sheepishly. "How could I forget? Everything you do, it sticks with me." They laughed quietly, leaning against each other, letting the world fade away until only the gentle lapping of the water remained. That evening was another reminder that love didn't always need fireworks. Sometimes it was in the quiet, consistent acts of noticing, caring, and showing up. Weeks later, Uri planned a small surprise for Tu Tieu at the same lakeside spot. He had set up a few candles along the dock and brought a thermos of hot chocolate, her favorite. The air was crisp, the kind that made every shared breath visible. He guided her to the center of the dock, where the candles flickered in a soft golden circle. "Tu Tieu," he began, his voice steady but tender. "From the moment we met, even with all my awkwardness, I've never stopped thinking about you. You've become my favorite part of every day." He took a deep breath, reaching into his pocket for a small velvet box. "And now, I want to spend every day making you as happy as you've made me." Tu Tieu gasped softly as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring. Her hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide and glimmering. Uri knelt, slightly awkward but full of earnest emotion, and continued, "Will you marry me?" For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The candles flickered, the water rippled gently below them, and the only sound was the beating of their hearts. Tu Tieu laughed through happy tears, nodding eagerly. "Yes, of course." Uri slid the ring onto her finger, and as he stood, they embraced, holding each other tightly as if sealing all the memories. The spilled coffee, the awkward cinema seat, every small gesture into this perfect, enduring moment. The simple, unpretentious love they had built over weeks and months felt infinite in that quiet lakeside glow. In the weeks after their engagement, Uri and Tu Tieu's lives settled into a comfortable rhythm, filled with the kind of joy that comes from being known and accepted fully. Their love was playful, with teasing and jokes, yet also profound in its steadiness. Uri still had his clumsy moments, dropping things or fumbling words, and Tu Tieu still laughed, always delighted by the little quirks that made him, him. Every shared coffee, every quiet walk, and every stolen glance reinforced their bond. And while the world around them continued in its usual pace, their relationship had created its own time and space, a bubble where laughter, trust, and intimacy thrived. Even the small setbacks, like a forgotten umbrella or a spilled dessert, became stories they would later recount with amusement, each mishap adding another thread to the tapestry of their love. The story of Uri and Tu Tieu wasn't just about grand gestures or cinematic proposals. It was about the accumulation of tiny, genuine moments where vulnerability was met with care, awkwardness with patience, and love with reciprocation. Every laugh, every smile, every hand brushed across the table contributed to the depth of their connection. It was the clumsy beginnings that made the profound love that followed feel real and unshakable. And so, the narrative of their romance serves as a gentle reminder. Love often begins in unexpected, imperfect ways. A spilled cup of coffee, a shy smile, a brush of hands at the movies. These small, seemingly inconsequential events can grow into a lifetime of shared memories and profound connection. Uri and Tu Tieu's journey illustrates that love doesn't always require perfection. It requires sincerity, patience, and the willingness to show up every day, even in the smallest ways. In the end, as they stood together on that candlelit dock, with the soft ripple of water beneath them and the sky fading into twilight, Uri and Tu Tieu both understood that this was only the beginning. Their love, nurtured by laughter, awkward moments, and genuine care, had grown into something lasting and beautiful. The proposal wasn't just an isolated moment of romance. It was a culmination of everything they had shared, a promise of countless ordinary and extraordinary days ahead, built on a foundation of trust, humor, and unwavering affection. And as they walked back, hand in hand, leaving the glow of the candles behind, Uri couldn't help but think how extraordinary life could be when it starts with something as simple as a spilled cup of coffee and the courage to keep showing up day after day for the person who makes your heart feel at home. This video tells the charming and heartfelt story of Uri and Tu Tieu, from their very first meeting to a life-changing proposal. Their journey begins with an awkward but endearing incident in a cafe, when Uri accidentally spills coffee on Tu Tieu, sparking laughter and curiosity. From that moment, Uri pursues her through small, thoughtful gestures, winning her heart with his genuine and slightly clumsy charm. Their first dates are full of playful moments, from shared popcorn at the cinema to quiet walks, building a deep and natural connection. Eventually, Uri plans a romantic candlelit dinner, where he bravely confesses his love and proposes, marking a turning point in their relationship. The story highlights how love often grows from unexpected, imperfect beginnings and blossoms through honesty, patience, and shared moments, creating a lasting and meaningful bond.